find out if you're ready for love. Here's your marvelous host, Nikki Lee.
Hello, and welcome to Ready for Love Radio. This is your host and love coach, Nikki Lee. On this podcast, I want to talk about domestic violence, but we're going to take an unusual slant to it. Instead of talking outright about domestic violence, my guest is a longtime friend of mine. We actually connected for the first time on Facebook years ago, and he's an author. He writes very interesting biographies, and he writes them in a very different way that it becomes very empowering for the women that he's writing about. And it's the kind of thing that I can't explain it well. So I brought him on because I want him to explain it and how it has such an impact on the women he's writing about, which he keeps anonymous, and the readers who read the content that he's writing. It's fascinating what he does and how well it works. And it's like I said, it's something you have to hear him talk about and you have to experience to understand. So we're going to talk about domestic violence, the signs to look for, because it's the kind of thing that you can end up in this kind of situation before you realize. And for people that have never been in it, it's hard to imagine. And for other people, it's like, how the hell did I get here kind of thing. I've talked to so many people that have been in this kind of a situation, and they, when you're looking back after you've gotten out, sometimes you don't realize how you got there, and other times after therapy or coaching or whatever, at that point you see how it happened, but it can happen so slowly you don't know. You don't know how it happened. So we're going to talk about some of the red flags to look for. We're going to talk about how you can help a friend, and where to go for help. And it's the kind of thing that you do need to get help. It's not safe often to get out on your own. And just, like I said, there's just so many things that can be done to help and to get out and to get to a safer place for you, for a friend, for a woman with children, and for a man. It's not just a thing for women. There are men who can be in a domestic violence situation as well. So there's a whole lot of great information we have to share tonight, and the show will definitely be archived. So you will be able to share this with friends or to come back and listen again if you need to. And I encourage you, if you know somebody that needs to hear this information, please share it with them. So I look forward to sharing the information and to introducing my guest. I will tell you up front that the show will be archived. It will be on my website at www.lovecoachjourney.com/domestic-violence. I wanted to make it something super easy to remember. So that's lovecoachjourney.com/domestic-violence. Or if you forget that, just go to lovecoachjourney.com and in the search box put in domestic violence. It will come up. I just tested it to make sure. So it will be there. And I'm also on all the big podcast directories. So you can just put in Nikki Lee domestic violence and it'll come up for you that way also. So I am very, very happy to introduce you all to my longtime friend, C.J. Cassidy. C.J., it is fantastic to have you with me today.
Thank you, Nikki. I'm just so glad to be here.
C.J. is actually a pen name, and he is a multi-published author. The last count I've got is 6. Is that right? 6 books?
I'm actually at 9, working on number 13.
I understand.
Wow.
I understand that so well.
Wow.
And he's going to let you know why his writing plays into what we're going to talk about today. And one of the things, I was looking over your bio last night, and one of the things I like, it seems like you do the same sort of thing I do with people, and get them to journal, and especially really hard situations they've been through. I know some of the worst situations I've been through. I sat down and I wrote about it, and it helps to get the information out there and to work through the emotions and to put them on paper.
Yes.
And one of the things I really liked in the bio you sent me was that some of the people have published their manuscripts once they've gotten through with it, and other people, they opted not to publish what they had written, and just the exercise of writing it down and getting it out was beneficial to them. How have you found that to help people?
Well, the person you're talking about is my little heart is Natalie. I'm allowed to use her name, known as the Naughty Dancer. We met on the internet when I published my first novel, and she contacted me and said she wanted to write her novel. But she had problems, and she had her own little diary, which she would do. She would go on her computer and write down her little things, and she would delete it at the end of the day, just to get it out there, because she just needed someone to talk to, and she knew this was the safest place to do it, was to write it on her computer and just delete it. But she felt the need that she wanted to tell her whole story, and I worked with her for 4 years on her novel, and it took her 3 years before she was able to say, "I love you." That's how damaged she was with the things that she had gone through her life. And once she was able to say that to me, she finally realized she didn't have to publish the novel. She gave me permission to publish it, but she felt that it wasn't necessary anymore, that her demon had been exorcised. It's gone.
Right.
She can now move on in her life and put back all the pain and the heartache that she had. And it's very important to write your stuff down. People have this thing where you go to a psychologist or whatever, and they ask you to write a letter to yourself and then burn it.
Right.
The same kind of a thing. Get it out there and then let the universe have it. Let the universe deal with it.
Very true. One thing that I've read, and I kind of have mixed feelings about this, but I'm just curious if you've had the experience. One of the things I've said is, it's great to get it out. But I've also seen that some people have the thought that handwriting it is more effective than typing it out on a computer. Have you ever noticed the difference?
Yes, there is a huge difference between typing it and writing it out with your hand, because there's a personal connection with seeing your own handwriting and putting it out there. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but I find myself that when I do handwritten notes on the novels that I'm working on, because when I received the paperwork on my third novel, which was Living La Vida Puta, which was from a friend of my first biography, all of her stuff was handwritten notes, literally on cocktail napkins. Some of the stuff was, and to see the actual handwriting, and you could tell, literally, you can just look at it and tell the difference in the moods in which she was in by, the pen she used, what she wrote on. It is a whole different experience in writing. And getting it out there.
I think one of the things, that I'm not going to word this right, I'm sure, is that something about actually having it physically, the words come out of you and down your arm and out the pen and onto the paper, and you're actually getting them physically out of your body in a different sort of way, in a more symbolic sort of way.
Yes, absolutely. It's a whole typing. Typing is a little bit too antiseptic. When you write, there's a passion. Muscles are moving, and the brain is forcing the hand to move this pen, and you're crossing things out. It's a whole different experience in writing when you do it by hand rather than doing it on a typewriter.
Well, see there, it seemed like it might be a funny question, but that I'm glad I asked.
Okay. No, because it does help in the process.
I normally type just them already on the computer. There are some things, the really bad things, that I have handwritten. I haven't done that consistently enough to have a personal opinion on it. That's why I figured I'd toss it out and see what you thought.
There's nothing more powerful than a handwritten letter.
And, people have kind of lost that with the technology we have. Kind of like actually spelling words out. People don't seem to do that much anymore either. How, just briefly, would you define domestic violence? For people that have the opinion, I know a lot of people seem to think that the only thing that actually falls under the heading of domestic violence or abuse is actually somebody physically hitting you. And that's just one part of it. So how would you define domestic violence?
I've mentioned this before, that I'm just an author. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not an advocate. I'm just a guy who observes and writes. But I have noticed that abuse is abuse, whether it be on the physical plane, the mental plane. It's the same type of control that people have over someone else that you don't want them to have, or that you acquiesce, and it's not a free will. So the yelling, the words that you use, the calling people stupid, or other things that they do to try to degrade that person at that point, to the point where they can't defend themselves. Right. That's abuse. When I wrote, the funny thing about the first novel that I wrote, A Tortured Soul, Catherine didn't just jump into an abusive relationship. It's like I've said before, you don't have a first date and the guy smacks you across the face and you go, oh, this is the man for me.
True.
Her relationships, her bad relationships started with the stares, the loud talk, the yelling, then the abusive words, then it became the hitting, and then it just snowballed into the point where she said to herself, how did I get here? Here's a woman who runs a major company, who can control people, do what they say by her word alone. And now she's in this relationship where she has absolutely no control, and she has no idea how she got there. It happens very, very subtly. It starts with, like I said, a look, a glance, that backing down from a yelling, or maybe it's a playful slap, and then the slap hits someplace where it's offensive to you. And then the next thing you know, it just snowballs to the point where you are no longer in control of your situation.
Well, when things happen that subtly, you get conditioned. You get used to one little thing, and then there's a little more and a little more. And the thing is, if it happens subtly enough, you don't notice the changes. Yeah. If somebody didn't see you for, say, a year or two, and saw you before, and then 2 years later, they're going to notice the difference.
Yes.
But that's just like people that were around all the time. A lot of times you don't notice because a lot of these things just happen so gradually that we don't see the changes.
Exactly. I read somewhere something amazing, that you have to stick a lobster in a hot pot of water to kill it, because if you put the lobster in the pot and then raise the temperature, it gets used to hot water. It doesn't die.
That's interesting. I like a good analogy too.
And a lot of people literally are in these relationships, and because it happens so subtly, they don't even realize that they're in an abusive relationship. It's like this way it's always been. No, it hasn't. You were never like this. You never allowed him to or her, because men do get abused as well, but you've never allowed them to do this kind of thing to you and get away with it. This was never your thing.
Well, and honestly, if you ask the majority of people and say, would you be in a relationship with somebody who's going to mistreat you? How many people are going to come out and say, yes, I'll take one of those? It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't
When
happen.
you get into the situation, you care about the person. Maybe you misinterpret love, what love is, what it should be. And you just to the point where it seems natural, seems normal. It's amazing how strange things can be, and we consider them normal when we're conditioned to think so.
There's a quote from the fictional character Morticia Adams that mundane is an illusion. What's mundane to the spider is chaos to the fly.
It's good.
I have a pair of friends, and they're Italian. Let's just put it out there. If they're not yelling at each other constantly, and I sit there and I watch them and go like, why do you put up with this yelling? And then I realize this is the way they've always been. This is the way they show affection. They're Italian. They have to have the loud voice. I actually one time heard his wife say to him, I wish you would stop yelling at me. And he replied, I'm not yelling. I'm just raising the volume on my side of the conversation.
True.
Everything is relative. It's like, you get used to a certain level, and which is why some people who are in abusive relationships and get out of them find themselves into another one. They have a tendency to go with the devil they know.
Yeah, it's familiar. It may not be good, but it's familiar.
Exactly. It's
so a lot of people. A lot of times people settle for familiar over the unknown and the fear of making a change. Because change, even though change is often very good, it's not easy in most cases. At least I've never found the most positive changes to be that easy to make. But it's so worth the effort. One of the things I meant to mention too is even though you're not a trained coach or therapist or that sort of thing, one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show is that you have a way that you're working with people, and you've had great success with the people that you've worked with, in helping them to change their life. And a lot of people, I think a lot of people do need to know that you don't have to have years of training to make a difference in your life and to help a friend.
No.
So, I don't want people to be held back and say, oh, I'm not going to go to a shrink, I'm not going to go to a therapist, I'm not going to go through all this. But start making the changes and find somebody to support you. You really need that support. And find somebody who doesn't have ulterior motives, that has your best interest at heart, that really wants to help you make a change. And the thing is, and we sort of talked about this earlier, and it's just, when I help people, it's not about me in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
I want to help them, but I want to give them the tools so they can make the change. So when they do get to a better place, when they are feeling better about themselves, they have the satisfaction of knowing that they made the change. I didn't do it. I might have helped them. I might have passed them the tools that they needed, but they're the ones that made the change and have the accomplishment.
Because the biggest problem of people in an abusive relationship is you cannot tell them to get out. Just leave him. Just go. Just pack it. You can't do that, because now when the consequences come back, they can turn to you and go, this is your fault because you told me I should leave. But when they make the decision on their own, they can accept not only the consequences, but the gratification. Right. That they were able to do this and do it on their own, and that's what makes them stronger.
Right. It's amazing how each thing we're successful at builds. You don't just all of a sudden if you're building a skyscraper, you don't start at the top. You start at the bottom, you lay the foundation, and it's one floor at a time. It's the same way when we make a change. You've got to start. You've got to be ready first to make a change. Right. You've got to have the foundation in place. You need your support system in place, just like with a building. Beautiful. And then you build on it one step at a time. If you try to take 15 or 20 steps at a time, you're not going to make it. So what do you think, and we sort of touched on this, but what are some of the things that you think contributes to a domestic violence situation for most people, for the person who is being abused and for the abuser themselves? Because like we've said, it doesn't just happen overnight. So
no, it does. I honestly don't know. I've always wondered about that. Is it a lack of self-esteem? Is it a need to give your control away to someone else? Some people believe that the punishment is deserved for something that they may or may have not do. I've never understood why people put up, because I've never done it. I've been in two relationships that could have turned into abusive relationships, and I literally just walked away. Right. And there are people who, for some reason, they have this nurturing thing where they go, well, I can fix it, or it's my fault, or how he gets, or he only gets this way when he's drunk, or he has a bad day at the office, and you have a tendency to want to fix it and say, I can deal with this. And there's a point where you have to say to yourself, I don't have to. I don't have to put up with your mess. Hasta la vista, baby, deuces, and I'm out of here. But I don't know what causes that, because I've seen people in loving homes get into the domestic. Catherine, who I wrote about in my first book, came from a wonderful home. She had no problems with her parents. There was no, child abuse. There was no abuse between, mom and dad in that house. And yet here she is, being beaten by her lovers. Why? She didn't understand how it happened. She became conditioned to it. You have people who grew up in abusive relationships, and I'm gonna put it out there right now. I was my sisters were beaten as children. They were in a very abusive relationship with my mother and father, and I was beaten by my mother as well. And yet here I grow up, and I wouldn't even think of touching a woman in a way that she didn't like. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it something that happened in your past, or a defining moment? There are so many reasons for these things to happen and not to happen. You can't say, "Oh, here it is. Here's the solution." And if you take these pills, it'll solve it for you.
Very true. Well, I think that's one of the reasons why I like to focus on warning signs or red flags. I'm big into looking at for red flags and all kinds of things because it is so subtle, it is so gradual, and like I said, there are certain things like low self-esteem, the kind of person that's just going to blame themselves for everything. There's those sort of things those kind of things don't automatically mean the person's going to end up in an abusive relationship, but they're more prone to it.
Yes.
They're more susceptible to it. So what do you think are some of the warning signs, not necessarily being smacked around, because, I mean, that's pretty obvious to people. What are some of the more subtle warning signs for people themselves or for people that may be starting to abuse somebody that they're in a relationship with, or for friends to look out for? What are some of the things we should look out for?
Some of the things that you need to look out for, where you sit there, and you have to understand, this is the list, but you'll find that you're going to be in a relationship where you're with a person that want to separate you from your friends and your family. They don't want you talking to your mother. They don't want you hanging out with your brothers and sisters. I don't like that coworker at work. I don't like the way she talks, and they try to separate you. They try to get you alienated from the people that you know. That's one of the things. They have a tendency to raise their voice to you or give you a look of disapproval, which you go like, okay, what did I do wrong? So now they make you introspect yourself. You'll find friends who are skittish. They're kind of people who for some reason, they flinch. They can't look you in the eye. This is the kind of person who's feeling inadequate. It's that feeling of inadequate, that low self-esteem that you'll find that's possible. And you'll also find a person who's wondering if their significant other is mad at them or can be mad at them for a specific... In other words, they're focusing a little bit too much about, is this going to make him happy or is this going to make him mad type of a thing. And again, with this list, there's a young lady who, because I love all my ladies like they're my nieces, my daughters, they're my family. There was one young lady that I met on the internet, and she is a very beautiful, powerful, put together woman. Reminds me a lot of my Catherine. And I sent her a copy of one of my books, and she wrote back to me and said, thank you. I thought I was the only one. And I went, what are you talking about? And to find out that she was an abused child and that she was in an abusive relationship and she went into an abuse. And I was like, what? She was the last person I would have thought that would be in this situation. So, like I said, it's a list, but it's not the list. You'd be surprised, when you turn around and you find out that Joyce Myers was abused as a child, sexually abused as a child. That Oprah Winfrey was sexually abused as a child. There was a minister who was very popular for a while, and she dropped out because it was found out that her husband beat her on a regular basis. And these are women who you sit there and you go, them? Never. That could never happen to them. There are signs. And there aren't. You can't just look at somebody and look at pictures like on a suspect board and go, okay, this one gets abused and this one doesn't. And it's just so. Sometimes it's so subtle. Sometimes it's so obvious. I mean, the black eye helps a lot. I leaned into the cabinet door is an obvious clue. But I myself am 6'2", 250 pounds. If I told you I was abused, you look at me like, what? You look like you can, take on anybody. It's not about your physical strength. It's even sometimes not about your emotional strength. It's about the situation and how you deal with it. And sometimes those signs are just not out there, but you have to be willing to sit there and go, this doesn't look right. You get this feeling in your chest where you go, that doesn't look right. There's something not right there. Right. And it could look like a perfect relationship to everybody else. And you go, there's something behind that. And you have to literally have your eyes and your heart open to see this kind of pain.
So what about effects on children in a relationship where there's abuse happening between the parents? What kind of effects does it have on children?
I had, again, from one of my readers, she was abused by her husband for 17 years. He put her in a hospital, I think, 2 or 3 times during their relationship. He left her and got another woman pregnant, but he kept coming back to the home to abuse her. And her, at the time, son was about 7 to 10 years old at the time, because this took a little while, kept blaming her. It was her fault. Why don't you just do what daddy tells you to do? Why does daddy have to leave? Why, and he kept blaming her. And she had my first novel, and she had read it for about 3 years, and she was cleaning the house, and she looked at the cover and looked at the face on the cover, and she said, if she can do it, I can do it. And she turned around and she gave it to her 10-year-old son to read. She said, read this. He read the book, and he wrote what was the most gut-wrenching open letter to his father, saying that now I understand what you did to my mother, and I will never grow up to be the kind of man to do that to a woman. I'm ready to start crying now. You have to forgive me, because that was... Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
you know, to have a child, you know, see the victim as the blame, you know,
right,
and then for her to turn around and have to deal with this, you know, this is another boy in her house who's treating her to a certain extent the way her husband treated her. Right. You know, with disdain, with, you know, looking down at her like, how dare you, you know, why can't you be a better person? And maybe he would have stayed, and then, you know, for him, sorry.
It's just an extension of the abuser's abuse of their victim, because I mean they're bringing in reinforcements for them to make their victims feel even worse.
Yes, and that's why you asked you sent me a question about how do you get friends and family involved, and sometimes that's difficult because some friends and some families become enablers or detractors because they do the same thing. Oh, girl, you know it was you because you know how you get sometimes, and you know how he likes, and their family who goes. I actually had someone in my family tell another family member that they should go out with this guy, and I'm going like, excuse me, but that guy's married. Yeah, but he's a good man. I'm sorry. Are you telling her to break up a marriage and go out with a married man because he's a quote unquote good man? Because
crazy.
So you have to be very careful on who you go to for advice and support, because sometimes support groups that you have, they're not there to support you. They're there to drag you down when it comes to sometimes friends and family, because they don't understand it. They can't fathom it. And it just makes it worse for you because you have no one to go to who's going to sit there and say, I understand. What are you going to do about it? Because that's what you should be saying. I understand. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the internet is, and you have to be careful because there are plenty of people on the internet that are not there for honorable reasons, to say the least.
Yes.
But you've got the ability to reach out to people that, I mean, I live in a small town. The chance of me running into people with any kind of qualifications for a lot of this stuff is pretty slim. Let's just say pretty slim.
Got it.
And with the various, between authors who are writing about things and you're seeing the changes they're making for people that have, various coaching training and this sort of thing, you can find those kind of people.
Yes.
And even if, say, they're, across the country, you can still be in contact with them. You can still help be in touch with them and work and give support, without that much difficulty, actually.
Yes. Now, I just want to mention a number here. It's the National Domestic Helpline. It's 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. It's there 24 hours. It's a national hotline, and they will try to help you. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call. So there is help out there for you. If you can't trust your neighbor or your friend or your boss or definitely not the person who's abusing you, there is help out there for you, and I do recommend call that number, talk to somebody who wants to help you.
Well, I think if you're looking for something because pretty much every area, every city has something in place.
Yes.
You may not know how to find them. I tell you the trick I learned years ago. If you're looking for a resource in your area, call the Chamber of Commerce. They are the most knowledgeable people when it comes to finding what you need.
Yes.
It's the wealth of information those people have in their head just astounds me.
Yes.
I don't think I've stumped them yet. I'm going to. One of these days I'm going to stump the person at the Chamber of Commerce. It's nice to know there's resources. I mean, because every city, county, that kind of thing has something in place.
Yes.
Well, and with people trying to help people in abusive relationships, they're not going to have a big sign out front because you got to protect the people coming in. So
exactly.
you got to go a different route to find them.
Yes.
But I'll make sure that the phone number is in the post on my blog also, so that people looking for information for the show will be able to find that easily. So the cycle of abuse, we kind of talked about that, and that's one of my real concerns with children that are in abusive families, and especially ones like the boy that you mentioned that blames the mother. It's your fault Dad left. It's your fault he's always in a bad. What are some things people can do to help to break the cycle of abuse? Or, no. I tell you what. Let's start with explain what the cycle of abuse is, in case people don't understand that.
The cycle of abuse starts very simply with getting into a relationship in which you no longer have a feeling of self. You have no self-worth, no self-esteem. It all becomes about this other person. Now, don't get me wrong. When you're in a love relationship, it is a thing about you caring about this other person, but it has to be reciprocated.
Right.
It has to be a give and take. There has to be an equal. It's when it's all in one direction.
Right.
And now this person who now has control of you doesn't care about you anymore. They're treating you like an option. And they make you feel like you can't do better than them. Go ahead. Go out there and see if you can find somebody, because you know what? I'm going to put you out in the street. I'm going to take away your car. I'm going to take away your house. I'm going to take away your kids. And there's this thing about, I'm going to literally throw you out on the sidewalk naked. See if you can handle that. And, it's that type of controlling mental control that they put on you that starts this abusive relationship where you no longer have a feeling of self-worth. It's so very hard to explain because I don't understand it. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't understand it. I've seen people who are in it and I go like, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you letting this man hit you, and then when he walks away, you walk in the same direction? He shouldn't be walking in the opposite. But everyone has their breaking point. Everybody has to hit rock bottom before they finally realize, I'm at a point where I don't have to put up with it anymore.
Right.
So it's just like I said, it's the words, it's the yells, it's the looks, it's the cowering down, the flinching that really starts it to the point where this person is just now treats you less than they would treat an animal.
Right.
Ooh.
Well, and woman that I did an interview with last week,
mm-hmm.
We were talking that you're going to have some pain and some issues and that kind of thing in a loving relationship.
Yes.
But love shouldn't hurt. If the person loves you, even if you disagree, this is like that. You can hate what a person's doing, but you never ultimately hate them.
Yes. Yes.
And I think one of my big things, and I mentioned having a healthy relationship to some people, and I get this like deer in the headlights look, or just like
mm-hmm.
they haven't got a clue in the world what I'm talking about.
Right.
But I think if you have a healthy, loving relationship, in order to have that, you've got to have a mutual love and respect for each other. Yeah. The thing is, if you truly love and respect another person, mm-hmm. even if they upset you or do something to make you super mad, you mm-hmm. aren't going to strike out at them in an abusive sort of way.
Correct.
You just, it's kind of like when you love your wife like your own body.
Yes.
Who is actually going to, who does something to physically harm themselves,
mm-hmm.
if they're in a healthy state of mind? The same thing, if you truly love another person, you're just not going to do that to them.
You're not going to want to do that.
No. If you do, if you lose control and you do, you're really going to feel bad about it. You're not just going to give a lip service to kind of manipulate them and get them to stay with you. You're truly going to feel horrible about what you've done to the person.
Exactly. And they never do it. They may apologize. They may bring you flowers or a little gift, but they really, really are not sorry for what they did.
Well, if a person is sorry, they don't do it repeatedly.
Right, exactly. It doesn't happen again. You did it to me the first time. That was an accident. Now you're doing it again. This is a pattern.
Very true. So what about people who tend to gravitate toward abusive partners? Because some people kind of fall into a pattern of this sort of thing, and they get very much in the mindset of, I don't deserve better than this, or it's all me. I'm the one doing this. It's because I'm a bad person is why I'm treated this way.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that a person can do? And I know one of the exercises I do with coaching clients is if if they can't find a healthy relationship or they can't find a long-term relationship, we go through and talk about their decision-making in previous relationships. Because often, if you're having the same problem over and over again, you're doing something that's contributing to that. What is the person doing that's causing them to end up in an abusive relationship? What are some things that you know that make you contribute?
What's happening here is the Pavlov's dog syndrome. You ring the bell, the dog salivates. A person has a tendency to be trained or be mind-controlled into believing that this is all that they can have. If I slap you, it's because you deserved it. You get out of that relationship, you get into later. If I slapped you, and then after a while, you start looking for the slap because it becomes a sign of caring, a sign of loving. It's what you're used to. It's the devil you know. And you have to sit there and stop. What I've told some people, and I don't know if it has worked or not, but I've told some people, I want you to get up in the morning, and I want you to go in the mirror, and I want you to write over the top of the mirror and leave it up there for you to see, I love you. And look at yourself and believe that. Believe that you care about the person that you see in the mirror each and every day. Because once you start caring about that person, you don't take as much guff from someone else.
Well, you realize that you deserve to be treated like a viable human being, and you deserve respect from people.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're not better than anybody else, but you're not the person that's the blame to everything for everything.
Sure.
And you deserve to be loved. And if the person that you're with cannot give that to you to your satisfaction, you don't need that person. Oh, goodness, I got to tell the story. So I was with this young lady in college, and I was sleeping over her house, and about 4 o'clock in the morning, she got up to make a big pot of boiling water. And I couldn't understand why she was cooking at this hour until she ran into the room and tried to splash it on me. She tried to make a lobster out of me. I simply got up, looked at her, and her throwing the water at me was not what scared me. What scared me is the fact that she sat down at the edge of the bed and calmly smoked a cigarette. Wow. And I went, okay, she has just shown me her crazy. I then got a garbage bag, packed up all my stuff, and left. There's got to be a point where you say, I deserve better than this.
Well, and honestly, and I've talked to people who are like, I can't be alone. I can't be alone. And speaking as a single individual, I can tell you, being on your own is so much better than being in a situation where you're being mistreated by somebody.
Yes.
But people just have this thing that it's not really they can't be alone, they won't be alone. They won't.
And they're conditioned to fear being alone.
Right. So many decisions in life are made because of fear. People don't realize that's what's motivating them to do it, but there's a lot of unhealthy decisions made because of fear.
Yes, because you don't. The young lady I told you about, whose son wrote the open letter to her father, she contacted me and she said, I did it. She said she packed up her kids, got in the car, and drove off to another state. Left because the husband wasn't living with them anyway, and she got up and left. And she said she lost her dog, she lost her job, she lost her house. And she says, I've never been happier. You saved my life.
Exactly.
And he went after her. He started talking about, I'm going to take the kids because I have visitation rights and you're taking them to another state. And I said, okay, here's the hard part. I want you to tell him to his face that he can have his kids, no problem. Trust me. He's not going to take them because he's living with another woman who's pregnant who has his child. She's not going to want him to have them. So he's going to let them go and let you have these kids. And that's exactly what he did. He was using the kids as a threat to get her to come back. And when she called his bluff, he backed off and he finally did divorce her. And now she's quite happy living, with her children. Her son went off to college and she's raising her 2 daughters now. And she's very happy in her life. Is it perfect? No, but it's not with him.
Right. Well, and it's more healthy for her and more healthy for her children, which is the important stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Honestly, I don't know anybody that has a perfect life. I really don't.
Doesn't exist. Don't even look. Anybody tells you a perfect life until they have it, they're selling you something.
Yeah. though, perfect would be boring. I could take a few less challenges, but perfect, I think, would be boring after a while.
Yeah, I can't deal with that at all. I have to have a little activation in my life to remind me that I'm still alive and still struggling. And
the thing is, that's just like people that complain when we have a rainy day, and they say, well, I want sunshine all the time. No, you don't, because then you don't appreciate it anymore, So if you have a little cold and you have a little rain, then you appreciate the warm, sunny, beautiful days.
Oh, everybody complained about the winter and how cold it was. It hit 80 yesterday. It goes, it's too hot out here. Really? Seriously?
You just can't please people. No, yeah, it was like 81 or 82 yesterday. It's like, man, it's just gorgeous. So turn the fan on.
Yeah, that's all. So it's just a big deal. Deal with it. You're going to see what you want to see and whatever. And if you're going to be miserable, you're going to be miserable. But don't allow someone else to be miserable. Like I said, in my first novel, Catherine, Nicholas had to teach her that she had to decide who was going to give her pain, how much pain she was going to allow to give them, and that she was always going to be in control.
Right. This is something that I've bumped heads with several people about for long term, is being in control of your life. And I've been told frequently that that's a very negative thing, that you shouldn't, need to be in control. And I figure if you're not controlling your own life, somebody else is going to take the reins from you, and they're going to control your life, and probably not in a positive way for you.
Right. Very rarely is it ever in a positive way for you.
Well, that's it. You can, and I'm not talking about, you have to manipulate every hour of every day or whatever, that kind of thing. I'm just saying you're kind of just floating along, in a boat with no rudder if you have no control over what's happening in your life. Correct. And you certainly can't make sure that you're being treated right and being treated with respect if you're just kind of,
going with
flowing down the river and not really controlling anything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What if a person is in a situation, they're realizing there's a problem and they need to do something? Mm-hmm. What should be a couple of the first steps they should take?
First, step number one is find someone who you can talk to about it. First of all, you have to admit it to yourself that you have a problem. That's right. Number one. But then you have to seek out either like you said, go to the Chamber of Commerce, go to hit Google and see what you can, find out about help as far as these things. But you also have to identify what the problem is and try to gain control of that problem so that, you can move on, because you can't stay where you are. You can't. I mean, you can, but do you want to?
Well, like I've said many times, making things change and getting things to a place where it's better isn't the easiest thing you're ever going to do.
Nope.
But it's worth the effort. And the thing is, you're putting just as much effort into trying to get through a bad situation as you would put into it getting into a better situation.
Exactly. Or staying in a bad situation and to get into a better one.
Well, it beats you down in so many ways when you're in a bad situation.
Yes.
Like I said, you could take the same amount of effort and get yourself to a better position.
Exactly.
There's going to be it's going to have to go from point A to point B, but at least you're moving forward into something better.
Exactly. Because you have to retrain your brain.
Right.
Pretty much. To not accept as much as you were accepting before, and just take, because you got into the situation gradually. You try to get out of it gradually. Sometimes you have to just get up and walk out and do cold turkey because, your life depends on it. But you have to redefine what you will accept, what you will not accept, and put more worth to yourself in this relationship than you do to the other person who's basically just has no feeling that you have any worth.
So what are some tips about reporting a situation or getting these things
difficult. That is difficult. When you're talking about being an outsider and reporting it, that's extremely difficult to do. Because if you're, let's say, a next door neighbor or a family member or a friend who sees that, you have a friend who's in this type of predicament, sometimes trying to report it to authorities only makes it worse. You have people who, again, don't believe that they're in an abusive relationship. No, everything is fine. He's broken your arm 3 times. No, everything is fine. That's what, and then you try to report it. Then all of a sudden you're the traitor. You've embarrassed the family. The beatings might escalate because now he's embarrassed because now, his secret, so-called secret, is out. It's very hard to sit there as an outsider and to report these things to another. For you yourself to report it's the same danger. I gave the 1-800 number, but if someone who's abusing you sees that you're trying to find your way out, you know what I mean? There's going to be consequences. So it's difficult, unless you're in physical or life-threatening danger. It's very difficult to sit there and report because people are not going to believe you. People are going to, like I said, they're going to justify the actions. Oh, you're overreacting. You don't know. Because nobody ever wants to believe these kind of things about, someone that they know. There was a film that I saw years back, which was awesome. It was called Once We're Warriors. And this gentleman beat this woman literally to a pulp. And her best friend looked at her and goes, "You burned the roast again, didn't you?" And I was like, "Are you serious? This is
unbelievable."
And this is her best friend, and it's such a difficult. Once you've dug yourself into that hole, it's so hard for you to dig yourself out, and you have a tendency not to accept help because you're embarrassed, or you feel that, listen, it's not that big of a hole. I can handle it. It's the reason why people don't seek help, and when help is offered to them, they don't accept it.
That's something I was thinking about. I've got a friend that 2 teenagers got to the point where they were being very emotionally and verbally abusive, mentally abusive, and the thing is, just disrespectful and unbelievable, the things that they were saying and the way they were treating him and doing him and this kind of thing, and it has gotten to a ridiculous point now, but and the thing that he was telling everybody is, I was so embarrassed to admit they were doing this to me, and so I didn't say anything. Or when I did say something, I would really, really tone it down because I just couldn't admit to myself or anybody else that my own flesh and blood was treating me this badly. And his mother was talking to the one of the local shelters here in the area, and they said that's the thing, and especially a lot of parents have this situation and that sort of thing because they just don't want to admit that this kind of thing is going on. So it's a lot of not only the guilt that the abuser may put on you, but just the shame that you've gotten yourself into this kind of situation, or thinking you can't handle the situation,
or you can't handle the situation, or right. Who are they to tell me that this is not right when I saw your husband yelling at you the other day because you whatever. It's amazing how we literally chain ourselves down to a situation that we can just walk away from.
Well, we have all these triggers within ourselves that normally protect us.
Yes.
But then it gets to this kind of situation, and they actually work against us. I feel shame that I've let this happen. I feel guilty that obviously I must have done something to cause this. It's amazing the mind games we play with ourselves.
Yes. To justify the situation. Now, I want to bring up a film that I saw. I can't remember the name. I think it was City of Men with Patrick Swayze. He was a doctor in India, and he found out that some local mafioso lord, this criminal lord in the town was completely just destroying the people around him. So he went to the guy's office to tell him, listen, you're doing this to your own people. What are you doing? And the guy had a chicken on his desk, and over the chicken was a bag of weights. And the guy looked at him and said, let me explain something to you. And he took the weight off the chicken. He says, the weight's been lifted from the chicken, and then he pushed the chicken would move. But that chicken still thinks that the weight is on him. He's not going to move because he thinks he's still pinned. That's how my people are. And he put the weight right back on the chicken. And I went, my goodness, there are people who don't realize that the weight has been lifted. But they're so used to being in that position, they can still feel the pressure of it. And you have people who just, like I said, because they're embarrassed, they're ashamed, I can handle this. And they can be free. They can just literally walk out and walk away, and they go, no, I'm still trapped. I'm still caught. There's still a connection between me and this other person. Even after the person has passed away, they still feel. You know what I mean? That's one heck of a mind game that's being played on that person. When a person has moved on, passed away, and you still feel that you're under that person's control.
Right. It's amazing the negative bonds we can form with other people sometimes.
Yes, and be free to them and not even realize it. Or have the ability to free yourself and not even, because like you said, you fear change, or you fear, that there's going to be a repercussion, either by walking away and walking into the real world and people going and laughing at you. Oh, they're going to laugh at you if you walk out there and tell them that you went through this. That takes an amazing amount of strength to let a person laugh at you and go, you know what? I'm free. I don't care.
There are just things that are so much bigger and more important than...
Yeah, and then peer pressure and how people perceive you, Joyce Myers talks about her abuse in almost every one of her sermons, because her thing is like, I'm past that. I was able to walk away from it. You walk away from it. I forgave my father. Forgive your abuser, but don't let it happen again.
Right. Yeah, well, that's like my thing, that we all make mistakes, but learn from your mistakes,
Right.
Well, and we all have become who we are at this moment from everything that's happened to us up to now.
Correct.
So the thing is, become stronger because of things you did positively, learn from the negative things that have happened, and then move past those. Don't feel like you're stuck in a rut, because you shouldn't be. There are always ways to get out of there. Again, it's not easy.
There are always options. Options. Are they easy to get to? No. Are they hard to get to? Absolutely. Is it worth it at the end? Well, that's what you have to decide once you get there.
I've never found something that worked really, really hard to reach that wasn't worth the effort.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is, we're not just saying this and making light of things and saying, oh, it's not that bad, you can do it. I know things that I've tackled, things that have thoroughly upset people around me in my life, but it was kind of things that I had to do for my personal well-being, or things that happened in the past that maybe for a time I did blame myself. I shouldn't have, but I did. But worked through them, dealt with the situation. And I've still got things I need to deal with too, but I know the number of things that I have dealt with, that I have overcome.
Yes.
And I hate the word victim. It has a very negative connotation. And my thing is, if you've gotten to the point where you've gotten yourself out of the situation, you've made things better, you're a survivor.
Correct.
You are a survivor, and relish the fact that you're a survivor. Thrill yourself with the fact that you're a survivor, and appreciate that. I wrote a couple of articles about having a victim or a survivor mentality. Those two mentalities are incredibly different.
Yes,
and a lot of people get into a victim mindset and don't realize that they're in that mindset. But it's like the light of day when you move out of that mindset and over to the survivor mode. And as long as you're making a change and you're making it better, even if it's just one small step at a time, you are a survivor. And, feel fantastic about yourself that you are.
There you go. Every day above ground is a good day.
I figure, my thing is, even if I wake up with a migraine that I feel like somebody's shoving an ice pick in my head, at least I woke up, and it can get better.
You get those too, huh?
Well, like I said, at least I woke up. That's better than the alternative. So
there you go.
Do you want to give people information about your website, or so they can get more information about the books that you've written?
What you can do is, my books are available worldwide, but they're easily purchased from Amazon.com or Kindle. Just look up C.J. Cassidy, the letter C. J. Cassidy, Cassidy, and you will find my books, The Tortured Soul, The Confessions of Jennifer X, and Living La Vida Puta. Those are the three books that are the biographies of these three women who have gone through different types of abuse in their life. One, domestic violence, one, child abuse, and the other one was actually gang raped as a child and had to go through her life with that stigma. Look up those books, and there's also the Tortured Soul Trilogy, which is a combination of all three books because, as luck would have it, these three women know each other.
Okay.
So when you get the trilogy, you'll actually get all three of their stories in linear order. So you'll get an idea of how they went through and survived and moved on with their lives. I do not advocate the BDSM lifestyle, but it happened to have worked for these ladies because that's what they needed to get back control. Just as a point that I want to make to some of the people who wonder how, because that's one of the things that Catherine was called a liar and a hypocrite about, was how can you be a survival of abuse but you like S&M? S&M and abuse are like a professional wrestling match and a barroom brawl. In a professional wrestling match, everything has been choreographed, everything has been set in motion beforehand, and the two opponents in the ring actually care about each other. If one gets hurt, the other one actually cares that the other one did. A barroom brawl is a free-for-all. Nobody cares about anything. They don't care who goes to the hospital. They don't care who goes to the morgue. A BDSM relationship can be stopped with one word. Stop. Nothing stops an abusive relationship until you had enough. But you'll find that these women were able to take their pain, their heartache, and as you say, survive, get past it, get control of their lives so that they're, happy and, and more, have more self-esteem about what they do and what they allow to happen to them in their lives and take more control of themselves. So please, by all means, if you do pick up the books and you happen to like my Facebook page, let me know what you think of the novel, because it means a lot to me and it means a lot to the girls that I wrote about, because they wrote these books because they wanted other people to get out. And I mentioned 40 women got out of their abusive relationships because of my novels, because they looked at it and they went, I'm not the only one. It's happened before. If they can do it, I can do it. And, Catherine got out, Jennifer got out, Toby got out, Nicholas got out of his abusive relationship, I got out of mine. If we can do it, you can do it.
Like I said, it's not just doing research and making up a story. I mean, it's people that really did. They did realize there was a situation. They did realize that they needed to do something, and they did make the effort to make a change.
Exactly.
So it is not to make other people feel bad if they're still in a situation. The whole idea is to give people strength and to give them help and say, hey, it can be done. It can be made better.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I am so glad we got to talk today. And, I figure with any of these, if we help any person, we've accomplished what I want to do. So that's all important. That's exactly. All that's important is knowing that someone out there, their eyes are opened and they can go, and breathe. Yeah. Well, like you said, sometimes people just need to know that there are other people that have faced the same thing.
Yes.
And survived and gotten themselves out of it.
Yes.
So, seriously, for people that are listening, feel free to reach out to either one of us.
Yes. We
do want to help. I mean, that's the reason that I do my coaching work is I honestly want to help people that are in situations and need the help. And so does CJ.
And it's an amazing feeling when you get a Christmas card or a letter from someone who says thank you, because it means the world to me. That is priceless.
And honestly, people may not realize it, but when we get those kind of things, I know I break down and cry. I am so glad to have been able to help somebody.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it sounds cliche. It's the way I feel.
It really.
So check out CJ on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I've also got a Are You Ready for Love page on Facebook, and I've got it set up so anybody can reach out and send me a message if they need to. And also on my blog, lovecoachjourney.com. I've got a contact button there. Every email I get, every message is confidential. I do not use other people's names without their permission on anything that I do. CJ, it's been great to have you with me today. And
it's been wonderful to be here.
You can check on the website at lovecoachjourney.com/domestic-violence. Also, you can check out author CJ Cassidy on Facebook. And definitely thank you for tuning in. And please, if you know somebody that needs this information, please share it with them. And the number also for the domestic violence hotline is on the show page. But if you need that, it's 1-800-799-SAFE, SAFE. All right. Thank you very much for being with us, and I'll be with you next time on Ready for Love Radio.